What do you think the fallout of MeToo has been now, approaching 10 years hence?
I often hear from men that they are now more reluctant to go up to a woman in a bar or whatever. That there's this problem of fear of being falsely accused of something. And so I believe them, if some men are experiencing that. I'm sure, though, what's gone on is that the men who were already sexually aggressive and likely to actually be, Me Too perpetrators haven't changed their behaviour at all. And the men who started being really careful were probably fine to begin with.
If you were a raper, the recent social media campaign probably, they've got a hashtag on Twitter, I'd better stop going around raping.
Yeah, which is, I wrote about in my first book, and it applies to this as to loads of things, the problem of normal distribution, where you have some trait which is arranged on a bell curve. And the problem is that if you apply some intervention, so whatever that is, like a social movement like Me Too or some policy change or whatever, probably what you want to do is you want to actually target one of the tails. You want to, so we've got we've got a bell curve of sexual aggression, and there's this like most aggressive end who are causing no end of harm. What we want to do is make them stop. But it's you can't just apply an intervention to that point on the normal distribution. Like, it's going to shift in one way or another, and everyone is going to be affected.
You're smearing the entire group with the same solution.
So what you end up with is moving the threshold for being like reluctant to go up to a woman in a bar or whatever slightly, just to mean that like some of the nice guys are not doing it. But that doesn't actually improve. It doesn't affect the rapists. And it doesn't improve women's experience of it. David
Buss's book, Bad Men, talks about it's one man doing 1,000 sexual assaults, not 1,000 men doing one sexual assault.
Yeah.
It's repeat offenders over and over and over and over
absolutely.
again. And unfortunately as well, repeat victims. There is something about the way that, again, this isn't victim blaming, but it is like something about the way that women hold themselves, where they showed this to, I think, maybe criminals in prison or assaulters or men that had assaulted people, and showed them a number of women walking, and they asked them to pick which one they would attack if they were going to, and they converged on the same women. So, for all that we can say, it's not about wearing the skirt, it shouldn't be about being in the dark alley at the wrong time, all the rest of it, like, correct. But there is something about particular women that causes predators to see them as viable prey. Does that excuse it? No. Does that, is that them choosing it? Also no. But like, this is just the way that the world appears to be.
Yeah.
It's ruthless.
Yeah, and it drives me mad that we tell lies to girls all the time about this, because we're so desperate not to appear to be victim blaming, that we'll say, oh no, you can behave like a man, you can do whatever you want, go back to some random guy's house, it'll be fine. And then when it inevitably isn't fine, we're like, oh, well, he shouldn't have been sexually aggressive. I was like, yes, obviously, but we don't, I would love to just like delete every rapist from the world all at once. I can't do that. Like, if the advice that I'm going to be giving my daughters is going to be, unfortunately, different from the advice I'll give my sons.
What would be the advice that you'd give them?
So, like, for instance, don't go back to a random man's house that you've just met. Like, basic, okay? Like, consider it to be completely commonsensical up until even like the 1980s, This is like recent stuff, but basically unsayable now, in feminist circles at least. Except everyone quietly says it,
Well, again, it's the stated and revealed preferences thing. Like, how many parents that will proselytize about this on CNN and say that, we shouldn't be telling women, oh, so you're saying that we should just accept the fact that men are going to do this. It shouldn't be that women should change their actions, men should change their behavior. Okay, what did you tell your 17-year-old daughter to do last weekend? Did you say, make sure that you text me when you get home, make sure that you're home before 11, etc.?
Don't get an unlicensed taxi, whatever, yeah.
Stated and revealed preferences.
Yeah, and what drives me bananas is that there are some girls who don't actually have parents or friends or whoever who are privately telling them the truth. All they hear is the public misdirection.
Oh, this is like the luxury beliefs of Me Too in a way.
Yeah. And so I feel as if actually we have a duty, people who are speaking publicly, to tell those girls the truth on the assumption that they're not going to hear it from anyone else.
It's the cultural surrogate mothers, in a way.
Yeah.
You've got this line between consensual and good, which I think relates to MeToo as well. What's that?
I think that a lot of there's a lot of things that came under the MeToo banner. Some of it was just unambiguously criminal, and, Harvey Weinstein or whatever got sent to prison for criminal acts. A lot of what came up, though, a lot of the stories that got shared were things that weren't actually strictly criminal. It was just like bad behavior. It was behavior that actually in another era you probably would have been called ungentlemanly or something like that. But that vocabulary isn't available to a sort of contemporary feminist who's really bought into the sex positive message. And so they'll tend to just talk about things being consensual or not consensual. And actually the consensual, not consensual bar is like a low one. It's a legal bar. It's not actually a moral bar, really. Like there are a lot of things that a man can do on a first date or whatever that are legal but are bad. Plenty. But we don't really have the vocabulary to describe them, which is why I try and make, like the feminist case for chivalry. We shouldn't have got rid of that as a concept. Like when you have this, as stark a physical difference and psychological differences between the sexes, 99% of men can kill 99% of women with their bare hands and not vice versa. We have to operate with that recognition. Chivalry in those circumstances is obviously in women's interests, even if occasionally it will mean feeling slightly patronised. Like, who cares? I'm so happy to have the door held open for me and my bags carried. It's completely fine.
If it means that someone's not going to assault me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I quote you and Mary about this all the time, that it is a straight line from you should hold the door open for a woman to you shouldn't beat your wife. It is one just continuous, women are worthy of protection, and there is an asymmetry between what men and women can do. Yeah. And again, Rob Henderson's coming a couple of days later than you. It's like luxury beliefs all over again. Yeah. Like the women who come from societies where their husbands already knew that beating your wife would be a bad idea, or they had the support networks where that wouldn't be accepted, were trying to deconstruct a support structure that was needed for the underclass women whose husbands had grown up without a father and whose stepdad had beaten them, who just presumed that the way that you were supposed to be in a relationship was to hit your wife.
Yeah. I mean, like Cheston's fence, like the wisdom of it. This idea from G.K. Cheston, you come across a fence in a field, you don't know what it's there for. The progressive, the reformer, whatever vocabulary he uses, says, we don't need this fence, let's tear it down. Whereas the conservative says, no, let's find out what it's for. And then maybe we might tear it down if it turns out that it really isn't necessary. I mean, just the whole last 100 years has been like
Fences
non-stop vindication of Chesterton's fence principle. Yeah. And I honestly think that most of it actually is to do with technology. Like, much as I love to complain about my political enemies, like actually the main thing that's changed for people has not been the intellectuals of the 1960s. It's been the dissolution of the family has as much to do with the pill as it does with anything any feminist has ever said. Like the real, I'm very sort of materialist in this sense. I think the real engine of history is technology. As Mary Harrington, our friend, likes to say, it's material reality plus memes.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. We sleep 1/3 of our lives. Do not spend 33% of your life in anything other than unbeatably comfortable sheets. Getting a good night's sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the sheets that you have are a massive determinant of just how comfortable you feel. Cozy Earth has the most premium bedding and loungewear that I've ever found. They're made from super soft viscose from highly sustainable bamboo, temperature regulating so you will sleep comfortably all year round, and an enhanced weave quality that won't pill. So it's higher quality, will last longer, and you will have a more comfortable night's sleep and wake up feeling more rested and revitalized. Plus, there is a 10-year warranty on all of their products. That's how confident they are that they're going to last. But don't just take my word for it. Oprah has chosen Cozy Earth as one of her favorite things for 5 years in a row now. You can get an exclusive 35% discount site-wide on everything by going to cozyearth.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom35 at checkout. cozyearth.com/modernwisdom and modernwisdom a checkout.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Louise, then press here for the full-length 2-hour-long podcast. Go on. Give it a press.